It was never supposed to happen that way. Just one late night, alone in the office, and everything changed. I remember how quiet it got when everyone else left, the usual buzz of keyboards and laughter replaced by silence so thick you could almost touch it. I stayed behind because we had a deadline, a big one. The kind that makes or breaks a project. And he stayed too. My boss, Ethan. Not just any boss, older, sharp, always dressed like he owned the room even when he didn't say a word. He had this presence, you know. Quiet confidence. That kind of calm that makes you feel safe, or maybe just trapped in your own thoughts. We worked side by side for hours, barely speaking, just the sound of typing and the occasional hum of the air conditioner. It wasn't awkward, not really. But there was something in the air, something I couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the way he leaned over my shoulder once to look at my screen, his hand brushing against mine for just a second longer than necessary. Or maybe it was the way he kept looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. I told myself I was imagining it. I always did, because the truth was, I'd felt something for him for a while now. Not respect, that was obvious. Not admiration, that was normal. No, it was something deeper. Something I buried under work emails and overtime shifts. Then the lights went out. Just like that. 1 second, everything was fine. The next, total darkness. I froze, fingers still on the keyboard, heart jumping in my chest. Somewhere across the room, Ethan let out a soft curse. There was a click, then the emergency lights flickered on. Dim, bluish, barely enough to see by. We both stood up, confused, checking our phones. Power outage. Probably a storm rolling in from the west. He walked over to the window, pulling the blinds open just enough to peek outside. Looks like the whole building's out, he said, voice low, almost thoughtful. I didn't answer right away. I was watching him, watching the way the faint light caught his jawline, how his tie looked just slightly loosened, like he'd been tugging at it without realizing. He turned back toward me, and for the first time that night, maybe ever, I saw something different in his eyes. Not authority. Not distance. Something softer. Closer. He stepped forward. Slowly. Deliberately. Are you okay? He asked. I nodded, but I wasn't sure if I was lying. My throat felt tight. My hands were shaking a little. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. He stopped just a few feet in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, subtle, warm, familiar. Like he'd worn it every day and I just hadn't noticed until now. I should probably go, I said, voice barely above a whisper. But neither of us moved. Instead, he took another step closer. Then another. Until there was almost no space between us. His eyes searched mine, like he was trying to find permission, or maybe an excuse. And I didn't stop him. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, frozen, waiting. Wanting. His hand lifted slowly, brushing a strand of hair off my face. A simple gesture. So gentle. But it sent a shiver down my spine. My breath caught. I've wanted to do that for a long time, he admitted, voice barely audible. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was me. But suddenly, his lips were on mine. Soft. Hesitant. Testing. And then deeper. More urgent. I kissed him back, like I'd been holding onto this moment for years, like I finally understood what I'd been missing all along. The world disappeared. The office, the power outage, the deadline, none of it mattered anymore. All that existed was this kiss. This man. This feeling. And then it was over. He pulled away, eyes wide, breathing heavy. For a second, he looked scared. Like he'd just crossed a line he wasn't ready to come back from. I shouldn't have done that, he whispered. I swallowed hard. Why not? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned away, running a hand through his hair. This is complicated. That word hit harder than I expected. Complicated. Not wrong. Not a mistake. Just, complicated. I wanted to say something, anything, to make it better. To make him stay. But I couldn't find the words. He grabbed his coat, muttered something about checking with security, and walked out. Left me standing there, heart pounding, mouth still tingling from his kiss. And I knew, right then, that nothing would ever be the same again. After that night, nothing felt the same. Even silence had a new meaning. It wasn't just quiet anymore, it was loaded. Every pause between words, every glance across the office carried something heavier than before. I could feel it in the air, thick and unspoken. And I wasn't imagining it. Ethan knew it too. He just didn't know how to deal with it. The next few days were unbearable. Not because he avoided me, that would have been easier. No, it was worse. He acted normal, or at least tried to. Same calm tone when giving instructions, same sharp gaze when reviewing my work. But there were moments. Small ones. The way his fingers lingered on mine when handing back a document. How his eyes seemed to follow me even when he pretended not to be looking. And the worst part, the way my body reacted to all of it, heart racing, palms sweating, breath catching in my throat like I was 16 again and seeing someone for the first time. I kept telling myself it was just a mistake. A moment of weakness brought on by the power outage and late hours. But deep down, I knew better. That kiss hadn't been impulsive. It had been waiting to happen. Maybe from the very first day I walked into his office, nervous and unsure, trying so hard to impress him. He saw something in me then. I felt it. And now, after everything, I couldn't stop thinking about what that meant. Work became a battlefield of stolen glances and accidental touches. One afternoon, we were alone in the conference room going over the latest project draft. He leaned over my shoulder, hand resting lightly on the back of my chair as he pointed out a line I'd missed. His breath brushed against my ear and I froze, unable to move, barely able to breathe. He didn't pull away right away. Just stood there, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body against mine. When he finally stepped back, he cleared his throat like he was trying to erase whatever had just happened. "Focus," he said softly. "We have a lot to finish." I nodded, but I didn't hear anything else he said after that. My mind was spinning. Was this teasing? Torture? Or was he just as confused as I was? There were other moments too. Ones that made me question everything. Like when he asked me to run an errand for him. Just coffee, nothing big, but chose me over anyone else. Or when he stayed late just to wait for me to finish up, even though he had meetings to attend. He never said much during those times. Just small talk, casual things. But there was always something behind his words. Something unspoken. And then came the day that changed everything again. It was another late evening. Most of the team had gone home, leaving just us two behind once more. We were working on final edits for the client presentation, which was due the next morning. The office was dimly lit, the usual hum of activity replaced by silence broken only by the sound of typing and the occasional rustle of paper. I was sitting at my desk, focused on the screen, when I heard him speak from across the room. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly. I looked up, confused. "Do what?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he got up from his chair and walked over to me slowly, like he was afraid of scaring me off. He stopped just a few feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. "This," he said finally. "Us. Whatever this is." My heart skipped a beat. He said it, out loud. And just like that, the tension in the room shifted. Became heavier. More real. I thought maybe if I ignored it, it would go away, he continued. But it hasn't. I swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. Because I didn't know either. I wanted to tell him that I understood. That I felt it too. That every second we spent pretending not to see each other was killing me inside. But I couldn't find the words. So I just stared at him, hoping my silence spoke louder than my fear. He took a step closer. Then another. Until there was barely any space between us. "I keep thinking about that kiss," he admitted, voice low. About how it felt. About how I wanted more. I felt my face flush, heat rising beneath my skin. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. He had me trapped, not physically, but emotionally. There was no escape now. Before I could respond, someone knocked on the glass door. We both turned sharply, startled. It was Mia, one of our junior designers. She looked apologetic. "Hey, sorry to interrupt," she said, clearly unaware of the moment she had just shattered. "I left my phone in here earlier." Ethan took a step back immediately, putting distance between us. He cleared his throat again, straightening his posture like he was slipping back into his boss persona. "No problem," he said, voice suddenly professional again. "Take your time." She smiled and walked in, heading straight for her desk. Neither of us spoke until she was gone. When the door clicked shut behind her, Ethan let out a slow breath. "We can't keep doing this," he said. I nodded, even though I didn't want to agree. Because I knew he was right. This was dangerous, complicated, risky. But I also knew that walking away wouldn't make the feelings disappear. That night, I went home with my head full of questions and my heart full of longing. I replayed the conversation over and over, wondering if he meant what he said, or if he was just scared. Wondering if we were standing on the edge of something real, or about to fall into something we couldn't recover from. And as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized one thing with painful clarity. I was falling for him. Hard. And I didn't know if I could stop. He asked me to meet him after work. Not at the office. Somewhere quiet. It wasn't a formal request, more like a whisper in passing, as if he didn't want anyone else to hear. We were alone for just a second in the hallway, and that's when he said it. "There's something I need to say. Can we talk somewhere else?" His voice was low, almost hesitant, like he wasn't sure what my answer would be. But I already knew what I'd say before he even finished the sentence. I nodded, heart thudding in my chest. Yeah, of course. That night, I stood outside the cafe he chose, a small, dimly lit place tucked away from the main streets, the kind of spot where no one you know would walk in by accident. It felt deliberate, intentional, like this wasn't just a casual meeting. This was something more. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with his hands wrapped around a steaming mug. He looked up as I approached, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. He gestured for me to sit, and I did, sliding into the seat across from him. The air between us was thick, charged with everything we hadn't said yet. "I needed to get out of there," he said finally. Voice barely above a whisper. "Away from the office. Away from everyone watching." I understood what he meant without him having to explain further. The office was a pressure cooker of expectations, routines, and unspoken rules. Every glance, every word, every gesture had weight. There was no room for honesty there. He took a slow sip of his drink, then set it down carefully. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted again, echoing the words he'd spoken days earlier. I swallowed hard, gripping my own cup tighter than I realized. "Then maybe we don't have to figure it all out tonight." He gave me a small, tired smile. "Maybe not." Then he leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "But I can't keep pretending either." Something inside me shifted at those words. It wasn't a confession exactly, but it was close. Close enough to make my pulse race. We talked for hours. About everything and nothing. At first, it was easy, safe topics, work frustrations, shared interests, the usual small talk you fall back on when you're trying to avoid the real conversation. But slowly, things changed. The walls came down, just a little. He told me about his past, not everything, but enough. About relationships that ended quietly, friendships that faded over time, family expectations that never quite fit. He spoke with a kind of weariness, like he had carried these thoughts alone for too long. "I used to think I could live like this forever," he said, staring into his cup. "Just keep going. Keep doing what's expected. Pretending I'm fine with it." I didn't interrupt. I just listened. "But lately," he trailed off, then met my eyes. "Lately, I've been wondering if I ever really was." I felt my breath catch. I knew exactly what he meant. I had spent years convincing myself that wanting something more, someone more, was selfish. That settling was easier, safer. But now, sitting across from him, I realized how much I had buried under routine and fear. "I feel like that too," I admitted softly. "Like I've been waiting for something I couldn't name." His expression softened. Maybe we both were. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, yes, but filled with understanding. With recognition. We weren't just two people talking, we were two people realizing we had been looking for each other all along. He reached across the table, hesitated for just a second, then placed his hand lightly over mine. A simple touch, but it sent a jolt through me, like a current running beneath my skin. "I don't want to hide anymore," he said quietly. "Not completely." I stared at him, searching his face for any sign that this was another test. Another retreat behind professionalism and distance. But there was none. Just honesty. And maybe a little fear. "What does that mean?" I asked, needing to hear it clearly. He exhaled, thinking. "It means I want to try. Even if it's messy. Even if it scares me." I let the words settle inside me, letting them take root. Because they mattered. They meant something. Okay, I whispered. Let's try. A flicker of relief passed through his eyes. Then he smiled, not just with his lips, but with his whole face. Like he had been holding onto something tight and was finally letting go. We stayed there for a while longer, talking, laughing even. It felt surreal, like we were suspended in our own little world, untouched by the rest of the chaos outside. For once, there were no deadlines, no expectations, no prying eyes. Just us. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. When we finally left the cafe, the city lights blurred around us, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. We walked side by side, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence beside me. Halfway to the subway station, he stopped and turned toward me. I should probably say this now, he said, voice steady but softer than before. So there's no confusion. I looked at him, heart pounding. I like you, he said simply. More than I should. More than I thought possible. I felt my throat tighten. I wanted to say something clever, something meaningful. But all I could manage was a quiet, I like you too. He smiled again, and this time, he reached for my hand. We didn't rush. We didn't kiss or rush into anything dramatic. We just stood there, fingers intertwined, letting the moment stretch between us. And then, slowly, we started walking again, together. What happened next? Well, that's where things got complicated. That line between professional and personal. We crossed it that night. It started with the weather, a storm rolling in late, dark clouds swallowing the city whole until the sky was nothing but endless gray. The wind howled through the streets, rattling windows and sending leaves flying like lost pieces of paper. Rain came down in sheets, turning sidewalks into mirrors, slick and reflective under the dim glow of streetlights. By the time we left the cafe, soaked from just a few steps outside, there was no way we were going to make it anywhere else. Taxis weren't answering calls. The subway had slowed to a crawl. And walking home was out of the question unless we wanted to drown on the way. We ended up back at the office. Not because we planned to, not because either of us said it out loud, but because it was the only place we could go. The security guard barely looked up when we walked in, muttering something about the power being out again before waving us through. He didn't ask why we were coming back so late. Didn't question why we were standing close enough that our shoulders brushed as we passed through the metal detector. He just handed us the keycard and went back to his crossword puzzle. The elevator ride was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of machinery and the sound of our breathing. I could feel him watching me, even though neither of us spoke. Every second stretched longer than the last, thick with something unspoken. When the doors opened, we stepped into the hallway, both hesitating for just a moment before moving forward. Inside, the office was eerily silent. No hum of computers, no murmur of voices. Just the occasional flicker of emergency lights casting long shadows across empty desks. It felt abandoned, almost haunted, like we were the only two people left in the world. He set his bag down first. Then his coat. I followed suit, my hands trembling slightly as I shrugged off mine and draped it over a chair. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, caught in the weight of what was happening. I don't know if this is a good idea, he said finally, voice low. I swallowed hard. Then why does it feel like the only one? His eyes searched mine, looking for hesitation, for doubt. But I wasn't hiding anymore. I had spent too many nights pretending I didn't want this. Too many mornings waking up wishing I had been brave enough to say what I really meant. He took a step closer. Then another. Until there was barely any space between us. And then, without warning, his hand was on my face, warm, steady, grounding. His thumb brushed against my cheek, slow and deliberate. I closed my eyes instinctively, letting myself feel it, letting myself believe that this was real. I've wanted this for so long, he whispered. I opened my eyes, meeting his gaze. Then take it. And he did. His lips found mine in an instant, firm and searching, like he was trying to memorize every part of me all at once. I kissed him back with everything I had, fingers curling around the fabric of his shirt as I pulled him closer. There was no hesitation now, no pretending. Just need. Just want. Just us. We stumbled backward, barely making it to the couch in the break room before collapsing onto it together. Our mouths never separated, our bodies pressed close, tangled in a mess of limbs and breath and heat. He kissed me like he'd been waiting for this forever, like I was something he had been chasing without knowing it. His hands moved slowly, carefully, like he was afraid I might disappear if he touched me too suddenly. One rested at the base of my neck while the other slid down my back, pulling me tighter against him. I let out a quiet moan, unable to stop myself. God, it felt good. Better than I ever imagined. He pulled away just enough to look at me, his breath uneven, his eyes dark with something I couldn't name. Are you sure? He asked, voice rough. I nodded, heart pounding. More than anything, that was all it took. He kissed me again, deeper this time, more urgent. His tongue traced the seam of my lips before slipping inside, tasting me like he couldn't get enough. I arched into him, pressing my body against his as my hands roamed over his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath his shirt. We undressed slowly, piece by piece, each movement deliberate, each touch intentional. There was no rush, no need to prove anything. Just the quiet intimacy of two people who had been waiting too long to be this close. When he finally slid inside me, I gasped, gripping his arms as my body adjusted to the fullness of him. He froze immediately, concern flashing in his eyes. "You okay?" he asked, voice strained. I nodded, biting my lip. "Yeah, don't stop." He didn't. He moved slowly at first, careful, giving me time to get used to him. But soon, the rhythm took over, and we fell into something easy, something natural. His hands held me close, anchoring me as we moved together, breath mingling in the silence of the room. It wasn't just sex. It was connection. It was release. It was everything we had been holding onto for weeks finally breaking free. I wrapped my legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, wanting more. Needing more. He groaned, burying his face in my neck as his pace quickened, each thrust more intense than the last. I whispered his name, barely audible, but he heard it. Felt it, and it made him hold me tighter. We came together, bodies tensed, breath hitched, hearts racing. For a moment, the world disappeared. The office, the storm outside, the consequences we hadn't thought through, none of it mattered. All that existed was this moment. This man, this feeling. Afterward, we lay tangled together on the couch, his arm wrapped tightly around me, my head resting against his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath my ear, a soft, reassuring rhythm that told me I was safe. Neither of us spoke for a long time. We just stayed like that, letting the silence settle around us. Finally, he broke it. He trailed off, shaking his head like he couldn't find the words. I smiled faintly, pressing a kiss to his collarbone. "Yeah," he exhaled, tightening his grip on me. "I don't regret it." I lifted my head, looking at him. "Me neither." He studied my face for a moment, then reached up and brushed a strand of hair from my forehead. "I don't know what happens next," he admitted. "But I don't want to pretend this didn't happen." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Because we couldn't go back now. Not after this. "We'll figure it out," I promised. And for the first time since this all began, I believed it. But even as we lay there, wrapped in each other's arms, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. That what we had just done would change everything. And maybe not in the way we wanted. We became experts at hiding us. But secrets have a way of weighing you down. After that night, everything changed, and yet, nothing did. We still went to work every morning, still sat in separate offices, still kept our distance in front of everyone else. But now, there were glances that lingered too long. Touches that felt like they meant more than they should. In moments, small ones, where the world seemed to disappear just for us. It started with little things. A hand brushing mine under the table during meetings. A note slipped into my inbox that said nothing about work. A coffee left on my desk with his name written in the condensation from the steam. No one noticed, or if they did, they didn't say anything. At least not yet, but we both knew it was only a matter of time before someone would. The hardest part wasn't the secrecy itself, it was the constant awareness of it. Every move had to be calculated. Every word chosen carefully. Even when we were alone, there was always the possibility that someone could walk in. That someone could overhear. That someone could see something they weren't supposed to. And the worst part, I hated how good it felt. There was something intoxicating about sneaking around, about knowing that he was mine even when no one else could see it. It made every moment together feel stolen, precious. Like we were living in a secret world where only we existed. But it also made me paranoid. I caught myself watching people more closely. Looking for signs that someone suspected. Wondering if Mia had seen the way he looked at me sometimes. If the intern who worked late one night had heard the soft murmur of our voices behind closed doors. If the cleaning staff had found something, anything, that proved what we were doing. Every time someone stared a little too long, my heart pounded. Every time someone asked why I was blushing, I lied. "I'm just tired," I'd say. Or, "It's been a long day." No one ever questioned it. Not really, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they knew. That they saw right through the mask I wore, the one I put on every morning before walking into the office. And Ethan, he was better at hiding it than I was. He never let it show, not in meetings, not in conversations, not even when we were alone. He remained composed, professional, untouchable. But I knew him now. I knew the way his fingers twitched slightly when he was nervous. The way his voice dropped lower when he was trying to keep something private. The way his eyes searched mine when he thought no one was looking. He was afraid too. One afternoon, I walked into his office to drop off a report, and he barely looked up. Just nodded, took the papers, and muttered a thank you. I stood there for a second longer than necessary, waiting for something, a smile, a touch, anything. But he didn't give it. His face was unreadable, his posture stiff. I turned to leave, disappointment settling in my chest. Then, just as I reached the door, he spoke. "Wait." I stopped, turning back toward him. He hesitated, then gestured for me to come closer. When I did, he reached out and brushed his thumb across my wrist, just for a second. Barely enough for anyone else to notice. But it was enough for me. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I miss you." My breath caught. I wanted to say it back. Wanted to tell him that I missed him too. That I hated this. That I wished we didn't have to hide. But all I could do was nod. He gave me a small, sad smile before letting go. That night, we met again. Not at the cafe this time, somewhere new. A quiet park on the outskirts of the city, where no one knew us. Where we could be ourselves without having to watch our backs. We sat on a bench beneath the dim glow of a streetlight, hands clasped between us. The air was cool, but neither of us moved away. We needed this. Needed each other. "I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending," I admitted, staring at the ground. Ethan sighed, rubbing his thumb over my knuckles. "I know. Me either." I looked up at him then, searching his face. "Do you regret it?" He shook his head immediately. "Not for a second." "Then why does it feel like we're doing something wrong?" He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he finally answered, voice low. Because the world says we are. I swallowed hard. He was right. Society, expectations, rules, they all told us this wasn't okay. That relationships like ours weren't meant to be seen. That love like this had to stay hidden. But I didn't want to believe that anymore. I wanted to hold his hand in public. To kiss him goodbye in the morning. To introduce him to my friends, to my family. To live without fear. But I also knew that wanting something didn't make it possible. Instead, I leaned my head against his shoulder and whispered, I wish we didn't have to hide. He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. Me too. We stayed like that for a while, just sitting there, wrapped in each other's arms. Letting the silence speak for us. But peace never lasted long. A few days later, the first real scare came. I was working late again, not because I had to, but because he was staying late too. We had fallen into a routine, pretend to be busy until everyone else left, then slip away for a few stolen minutes together. That night, we were in his office, standing close, his lips pressed lightly against mine. It was brief, just a kiss, barely more than a brush of skin against skin. But it was enough. And then, the door opened. We both froze, pulling apart instantly. Someone cleared their throat. Sorry, Mia said, eyes wide, clearly caught off guard. I thought everyone had gone home. Ethan recovered quickly, stepping back and adjusting his tie like nothing had happened. No problem. Just finishing up some last-minute edits. Mia nodded, but her gaze flickered between us, lingering just a second too long. Right, well, I'll just grab my laptop and get out of your way. She moved past us, heading straight for her bag. I could feel her watching us the entire time. When she finally left, neither of us spoke for a long moment. She didn't see anything, Ethan said quietly, though I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. I wasn't so sure. What if she suspects? He exhaled sharply. Then we just keep going like normal. But I knew things wouldn't be the same. Because from that point on, I could feel it, the weight of the secret pressing harder against my chest. The paranoia growing stronger, the fear that we were running out of time. And the worst part, I didn't know if I could keep doing this forever. Because loving him was easy. Hiding it was killing me. One truth could end everything. But keeping it buried might destroy us. It started with a whisper, not in words, but in glances. In the way people looked at me when I walked into the office. The way conversations stopped just as I entered a room. The way Mia avoided my eyes whenever we passed each other in the hallway. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. That my paranoia had finally reached its peak after months of living in the shadows, pretending that what Ethan and I had wasn't real. But then came the texts. Not from him, from someone else. A message popped up on my phone one afternoon while I was working. Just a simple line. Asterisk, I know what's going on between you two. I stared at it for a long time, heart hammering in my chest. No name, no explanation, just those 5 words, heavy enough to knock the breath out of me. I didn't respond, couldn't. My fingers hovered over the screen, but I couldn't bring myself to type anything back. Who had sent it? Mia. Someone else. Had she told someone? That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying every moment, every interaction, trying to find the exact second things had unraveled. Was it the kiss in his office? The lingering touches? The stolen moments behind closed doors? Or had someone been watching all along? The next day, the tension in the office was unbearable. People were quieter than usual, like they were waiting for something to happen. I caught glimpses of hushed conversations, heads leaning in close, mouths moving quickly before snapping apart when I approached. And then, it hit. Not all at once, but in pieces. A coworker asking me if I was okay. Another making a comment about office relationships during lunch. A new email in my inbox from HR, requesting a private meeting. Panic surged through me. I walked into the meeting room with shaking hands, trying to keep my face neutral. Ethan wasn't there. Just me and the HR manager, a woman named Lillian who had always been kind, but now looked at me like I was a problem waiting to be solved. I've received some concerns, she said carefully, folding her hands in front of her. About your relationship with Mr. Harper. My throat tightened. I tried to speak, but nothing came out at first. What kind of concerns? She gave me a look, not judgmental, not angry. Just tired. Like this was something she had dealt with before. There have been reports that you and Mr. Harper are involved in a personal relationship, she explained. That you've been spending an unusual amount of time together outside of work hours. That there have been inappropriate interactions in the office. I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. We're just friends. Lillian tilted her head slightly, studying me. Are you sure about that? I wanted to say yes. Wanted to lie and walk away and pretend none of this had ever happened. But I couldn't, because the truth was written all over my face. Instead, I stayed silent. She sighed softly. You understand that this is a conflict of interest, right? There's a power dynamic here. And company policy strictly prohibits romantic involvement between employees in supervisory positions and their subordinates. I nodded slowly. I knew. We both did. That was the line we had crossed the moment we let ourselves fall for each other. What happens now? I asked quietly. She hesitated. For now, we're opening an investigation. We'll need to talk to both parties involved. If the allegations are proven true, disciplinary action may be necessary. I felt my stomach drop. Disciplinary action. That meant more than just a warning. It meant consequences. Job loss. Reputations ruined. Everything we had built, gone in an instant. When I left the room, my legs felt like they might give out beneath me. I stumbled down the hallway, barely aware of where I was going until I found myself standing outside Ethan's office. He looked up immediately when I walked in, his expression shifting from confusion to concern in an instant. What's wrong? He asked, standing up. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. They know, I whispered. His face paled. What? They know about us. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then he ran a hand through his hair, pacing back and forth. Who? He asked, voice tight. I don't know. Someone sent me a message. And HR called me in today. They're investigating. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. Shit. I stepped forward, gripping the edge of his desk. Ethan, what do we do now? He shook his head, looking lost for the first time since this had all begun. I don't know. That answer hurt more than I expected. I had imagined so many ways this could end, good or bad. But never like this. Never with fear replacing the warmth in his eyes. Never with silence filling the space where promises used to live. I wanted him to fight. To tell me that whatever happened, we would get through it together. That no matter what anyone said, our love was worth it. But instead, he backed away. I think, he paused, swallowing hard. I think I need some time to figure this out. My heart sank. You mean you want to stop this? He didn't answer right away. And that silence was louder than any words could have been. I took a step back, shaking my head. You can't do this. You can't just walk away now. I'm not walking away, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. I need to think. No. I shook my head again, tears pricking at the edges of my vision. You either choose me, or you don't. His jaw clenched. You know how complicated this is. Then make it simple, I snapped. Tell them the truth. Tell everyone that we love each other and that we're not ashamed of it. He looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was trying to decide if I was serious. I can't, he admitted finally. Not yet. And just like that, the last thread holding us together began to unravel. I turned and walked out without another word, slamming the door behind me. By the time I got home, I was shaking. Not just from anger, but from fear. From disappointment. From the crushing weight of realizing that maybe, just maybe, I had given everything to someone who wasn't ready to give it back. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. The real fallout hadn't even started yet. When the truth came out, it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like falling. It wasn't dramatic at first. No announcement, no confrontation, no big reveal in the middle of the office with everyone watching. It was quieter than that. Subtler. Crueler. Someone leaked it. Not Ethan. Not me. Someone else. A screenshot of a message I had sent him once. Something small, something innocent, but enough to start the fire. A photo taken from across the hallway, blurry and distant, but unmistakable. Rumors spread like smoke, filling every corner of the office until there was nowhere left to hide. By the time I walked in the next morning, it was already over. People looked at me differently. Not just curious glances or quiet whispers, full-on stares. Some sympathetic, some judgmental, others outright cold. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me as I made my way to my desk, trying to pretend like I hadn't spent the entire night replaying everything in my head, wondering how it had all unraveled so quickly. Ethan wasn't in his office. I checked my phone again, hoping for a message. Anything. But there was nothing. The silence between us had never felt heavier. HR called me in again that afternoon. This time, they weren't asking questions. They were giving answers. There's been a formal complaint filed, Lillian told me, her voice softer than before. Given the evidence that has surfaced, we're moving forward with disciplinary proceedings. I barely heard the rest. Words like, violation of company policy, and, conflict of interest, blurred together in my mind, meaningless except for what they meant for me, for us. Will he be fired too? I asked quietly. She hesitated. That decision hasn't been made yet. Of course not. Because power always protected itself. Because when you're at the top, even your mistakes have consequences that can be managed. For people like me, there was no safety net. I walked out of that meeting feeling hollow. And then, finally, Ethan reached out. A text. Just one line. Asterisk, we need to talk. I met him in the stairwell, away from prying eyes, away from anyone who might see us one last time. He looked exhausted, guilty, like he had aged 10 years in just a few days. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I folded my arms, waiting. They're putting me on administrative leave, he continued. Pending investigation. I nodded slowly. And me? They haven't decided yet. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course not. You get a break. I get a firing squad. His jaw tightened. It's not like that. No. I snapped. Then tell me what it is like, Ethan. Because I'm standing here, and I don't even know what this is anymore. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flashing in his eyes. I tried to stop this. I told them it wasn't your fault. That I should take responsibility. But you didn't, I pointed out. You let it happen. I didn't have a choice. Yes, you did. My voice cracked, and I hated how weak I sounded. You could have stood up for us. You could have said something, done something, but instead, you let it fall on me. He looked away. And that was the moment I realized the truth. He wasn't going to fight for us. He was afraid. And maybe he always had been. I don't know what you want me to say, he admitted finally. I don't know how to fix this. I shook my head, tears burning behind my eyes. You don't get to fix it. You lost that right the second you let me carry this alone. He reached for me then, his fingers brushing against mine, but I pulled away. No, I whispered. Don't. He dropped his hand, swallowing hard. I never wanted to hurt you. No, I agreed. But you did anyway. There was nothing else to say after that. No grand speech. No final kiss goodbye. Just silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I turned and walked away without looking back. Because I knew if I did, I wouldn't be able to leave. The next day, I was gone. Not fired, not officially. But I couldn't stay. Not after everything. Not after the way people looked at me now. The way conversations stopped when I entered a room. The way I felt like a ghost walking through the place where I used to belong. I packed up my things quietly, placing the last box on my desk before stepping back and staring at the space where I had spent so many hours. So much of my life had been built here. And now, it was all slipping through my fingers like sand. Mia found me just as I was about to walk out. I'm sorry, she said softly. I looked at her, surprised. You were the one who saw us, weren't you? She hesitated, then nodded. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I thought someone needed to know. I exhaled sharply. Well, now everyone does. She winced. I didn't think it would go this far. I believed her. But it didn't change anything. I liked working here, I said quietly. I liked the person I was becoming. She gave me a sad smile. Maybe you'll find somewhere better. I hoped she was right. As I stepped out into the city, the air felt different. Heavier. Like I had left something important behind. And maybe I had. Or maybe I had finally set myself free. For weeks after, I didn't hear from him. No calls. No messages. No attempts to reach out. It hurt more than I expected. I kept telling myself that I had done the right thing. That walking away was the only way to survive. That staying would have crushed me completely. But still, I missed him. I missed the way he looked at me when no one else was watching. The way his voice softened when he spoke my name. The way he held me like I was something worth protecting. I missed loving him. And sometimes, late at night when the world was quiet, I wondered if he missed me too. But I never asked. Because some wounds take longer to heal. And some goodbyes are meant to last forever. You can lose everything and still find yourself. It's strange how life moves on, even when you feel like you've been left behind. The city didn't stop for me. The world kept turning. People went to work, met friends for coffee, laughed at things I couldn't even remember the sound of. But for a long time, I was just stuck. Like I had been thrown off course and didn't know how to find my way back. The first few weeks after leaving the office were the hardest. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that walking away was the only way to survive. But survival doesn't mean healing. It just means you're still breathing. I didn't talk about it much, not with anyone. Not with my friends, not with my family, not even with myself. I buried it under routines and distractions, trying to fill the silence with anything loud enough to drown out the memories. But they always came back. In dreams. In songs. In moments when I would catch a scent or hear a voice that sounded just like his, and my heart would twist all over again. For a while, I hated him. Not because he lied. Not because he let it happen. But because I still loved him. Even after everything. Even after the silence. After the choices he made. After the way he let me carry the weight of us alone. And maybe that was the cruelest part, realizing that love doesn't always die when it should. Sometimes it lingers, stubborn and painful, refusing to let go even when you beg it to. But time has a way of softening things. Not all at once. Not in the way movies make it seem, where one sunrise fixes everything and suddenly you're smiling again. No, it was slower than that. Subtler. A quiet shift, like waking up one day and realizing the pain isn't as sharp anymore. That the memories don't cut as deep. I found a new job. Small, but honest. No hidden glances. No stolen moments. Just work, and people who saw me for who I was, not for what I was hiding. I made friends again. Real ones. The kind who asked how I was doing and actually listened when I answered. And slowly, I started to believe that maybe I could be okay. Not perfect. Not healed. But okay. Sometimes, that's enough. I never reached out to Ethan. Never sent the message I almost typed 100 times late at night when loneliness felt too heavy to carry alone. And I don't think he ever tried to contact me either. Maybe he was afraid. Maybe he was busy rebuilding his own life. Or maybe, just maybe, he understood that some chapters aren't meant to have sequels. I used to wonder what he thought when he looked back on us. Did he regret it? Did he miss me the way I missed him? Did he ever wish he had fought harder? I'll probably never know. But what I do know is this: loving him changed me. Not just in the ways I expected, but in the ways I needed. Before him, I lived inside boundaries I didn't even realize I had drawn for myself. I played it safe. I hid parts of me away, convinced that some truths weren't worth the risk. But being with him, even if it ended in heartbreak, showed me something important. That love shouldn't have to hide. That I deserved to be seen. To be chosen. To be held without apology. And most importantly, that I was allowed to want more. There are still days when I think about him. When I imagine what might have happened if we had taken a different path. If we had come clean sooner. If we had faced the world together instead of letting fear pull us apart. But imagining, what if, doesn't change the past. It only keeps you from moving forward. So I let it go. Slowly. Painfully. But I did. Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is walk away from something beautiful because you finally understand your own worth. And now, when I look at my life, not the one I imagined, but the one I'm living, I see something I didn't expect. Hope. Not the fairy tale kind. Not the version where everything works out exactly the way you want it to. But the real kind. The kind that comes from surviving something hard and still choosing to believe in love. In connection. In the possibility that somewhere out there, someone will see you and choose you without hesitation. Because I deserve that. And so do you. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever loved someone you couldn't be with? And if you want more stories like this, subscribe and hit the bell. Because sometimes, the hardest part of love isn't losing it. It's finding the strength to live it.